So watching my son decide to go into the Army National Guard and take the step, even more intense step perhaps than I did in the Marine Corps, but taking the step to go into basic training, Army basic training, between his junior and senior year in high school, that was super inspiring to me. To see him go out on his own, because I'll be clear, I love the military, I love veterans, I love everything about the U.S. military and national defense, but it is one of those occupations that I would never push anyone into, including my son. I was very specific in not pushing him to that, because I understood the stresses of it. I understood the challenges of it, and if you're not in there through your own desire to be there, you're not going to do well. It's a great occupation, lots of opportunity there, and great careers for people, but it has to be your choice. So I say that because I took a step back, and then to see my son kind of follow in my footsteps and say, I want to go in and serve my country too, was really cool and satisfying for me as a dad, especially because I knew it was his decision and not me pushing him into it. So that was impactful from a father's perspective, but it was also really interesting because it just made me realize, you know, he's my son. I love him to death, but he's a regular kid, you know, and it just reminds you, I guess, that we have these young people from all different backgrounds, all different makeups, and they want to serve. They want to go fight for their country. They want to defend their country. They want to help the community in the National Guard sense, and they go voluntarily into this stuff. And, you know, everything has its challenges. So, but my heart does go out to these people who are willing to make that sacrifice. You know, you hear that, hey, thank you for your service, but it's true. Like, we need to thank them for their service, because these young people are stepping up to do that. I will say this too, just as I'm thinking about it. I think a lot of times our young, like our high school graduates, this generation is not, doesn't get the credit that they deserve. I think maybe it's traditional, maybe it's just the way things have always worked, but the older generation, you know, talks about, oh, well, the younger generation doesn't do this, or they're not like this, or whatever, and I don't feel sometimes like this generation gets the credit they deserve. And so then to see someone such as my son and people that are the same age as him taking time out of their lives to go put themselves in stressful situations, into basic training, into combat training, into technical schools, et cetera, and to get forged through this disciplined arena is inspiring. It's awesome, and that takes a lot of fortitude. That takes more guts than you know sometimes. I want to support them in every way. I want to give them the resources that they need. Going back to mental health, I saw firsthand when I was deployed. I wasn't married yet. I hadn't met my wife yet, but I was deployed over in Okinawa, Japan, for about 1.5 years, and there were so many people who were married with kids, and they were enlisted, so they were at a certain rank where they weren't allowed to bring their families over like you could if you were an officer or something. And this was before even the internet and, you know, all this stuff, so the ways to communicate were challenging. And to see the stresses on their lives being deployed away from their families. And then conversely, before I went to Okinawa, I was at Camp Pendleton, and I would see the other side. I would see Marines who were deployed around the world and their wives or their husbands. You know, usually it was you know, the Marines were out and their wives would be left behind with kids, and yet they're still living on base. They're trying to connect with people. They're trying to keep it together. You know, they're living as a single parent, and so you just have stresses all over the place. You have and it's typical across all of the military branches. It's the highest divorce rate in the country. I don't think that gets talked about enough. Because of that, we need to have this idea of mental health and counseling and resources, family centers, whatever we can do to help our service members and their families do well. It is it takes its toll. And again, it's one of those cultures where you are built to show strength, right? We have the greatest military in the world. It's if you are a member of the military, your job is to strike fear into the hearts of your enemy. You do that by projecting a massive level of strength. The downside of that is that behind the scenes, we're not allowing these same service members who are on the fighting lines to say, you know what, I'm not doing well today, or I'm having a hard time with my marriage, or whatever. That's not part of the culture. And I think we need to bring awareness to that too. And I think I may have mentioned it before, but I don't believe that is a sign of weakness at all. I think it will greatly increase our level of strength in our military. I think it will only help those military families. That brings them a greater level of stability and allows them to thrive in the way that they need to. We need to do whatever we can to make sure that our veterans and our fighting force are whole and healthy and ready to defend us as a country at a moment's notice.